Thanks for having me, Tim. It's really great to be here, and I love the title "Hidden Gems." It's nice to be one of the people featured today. I'll take you through icetana's video analytics surveillance software capabilities over the next 10 minutes or so. So there's plenty of time for questions. Please flick to the next slide, which is one we won't spend any time on, but I needed to make sure it was included. So let's talk a little bit about the industry that we play in. So probably, if you walk to work today, not many people do anymore after COVID, but if you'd walk to work today, you'd probably walk past anything between 20 to 50 surveillance cameras. There's currently over 1 billion surveillance cameras globally, and it's growing at 16% per annum. It's an astoundingly fast-growing sector. And the vast bulk, if you go to the next slide, the vast bulk of those cameras are not actively surveilled at all. Sorry, next slide, please. So people are not looking at what's going on those cameras. They're used for recording, and you will see on the news reports people, wading through forensic footage and trying to track down who did what to whom over the surveillance networks. However, AI technology has dramatically changed the perspective of security operations professionals, facility managers, the persons who manage these networks are increasingly seeing opportunities for the computer vision to start to scale up the value that you can accrue from these very expensive surveillance networks that you've rolled out. There's the network facilities, the cameras, etc. You go to the next slide, please. The technology now has come ahead leaps and bounds. We are getting releases from a product called YOLO, which stands for You Only Look Once, computer vision technology. It's being released like every 2 or 3 months. There's a new update to it. It is unimaginable 5 or 6 years ago that you could have this many people in a scene all having boxes drawn around them. There's probably anything between 60 to 80 of these hundreds of people being specifically identified by the software in this particular view of Trafalgar Square. That gives you an idea of where this technology is going. And icetana is absolutely on the cutting edge of the technology. And we've built an incredible team who are building some really, really cool products to specifically serve the surveillance industry. Can you go to the next slide, please? The physical security space is a large and growing sector. At the top level, you're talking about guarding services, response systems, alarms that go off when people kick doors down, access control, etc. Within that sector, there's also surveillance, which is your cameras, control rooms, video management systems, etc. And where icetana sits is in the standalone surveillance analytics, where we are purely a software company. We don't manufacture cameras or hardware or anything like that, but we build the software that takes these video streams, extracts data from them, and then we utilize that data using AI systems to be able to identify unusual and anomalous events. We go to the next slide, please. Quick snapshot of the company. So we've been around for over 12 years now. We have 55 customer sites around the world with over 15,000 cameras every day using icetana to identify these events. We're a very lean team of just 16 FTE. But active on 5 different continents. The past 2 years, June 20 to June 22, we've achieved 40% per annum annualized recurring revenue growth. And that's our key financial metric, is recurring revenue. We are a software as a service company. Unlike other software as a service companies, we don't offer our service as a cloud-based offering. So we're not your kind of classic, I pay, I connect through the internet to connect things. And one of the reasons for that is there's a huge amount of data produced by a typical surveillance camera, and it's extremely expensive to stream that up, even with the high-speed NBN type connections you see today in Australia and in other parts of the world. If you go to the next slide, please. So just to talk about how we differentiate ourselves when we're pitching to prospective customers. This is a large and busy space, as you would expect with 1 billion cameras out there and people charging on a per camera basis. Almost all of our competitors use a rules-based approach to giving solutions to their customers. A rules-based approach means that you are essentially building a product that says, if this, then that. So, for example, if this face matches my facial recognition database, give me an alert or alarm. Or if somebody crosses over this virtual tripwire that I've drawn on the screen, let me know about this type of thing. At icetana, we have a very different approach. We are kind of like I think a bit like Apple, you know, when the first Apple iPhone came out and only had one button, and everyone was like, oh my God, how can I use this? It's only got one button. We drive towards simplification. And icetana is all about no settings having to be set by the customer at all. You implement the system. It trains within a day, starts learning what's normal in front of the camera, and then having created a model of understanding of what's going on in front of the camera, it starts to pop up interesting and anomalous events. Typically, we are reporting anything up to maximum 2% of surveilled time, and we use a black screen interface, which you can see at the bottom right of this screen, where events fade in and fade out. If you're a security operator sitting in a control room, and some of the control rooms we work with are extremely large, you can literally fall asleep within about 15 to 20 minutes looking at a moving wallpaper of lots and lots of images. What icetana does is it removes all that moving wallpaper. It presents a blank screen, and when events happen, it could be any camera on their network. We pop it up, we fade in, we fade out, and these pops, as our customers call them, allow them to catches their eye, lets the human brain do an assessment of whether that event is something that they need to respond to or not, and it starts to catch things that go far beyond basic rules, beyond the things that you might imagine or decide that you specifically want to find, and you start seeing things that you had no idea were happening in front of your cameras. And this is a very easy pitch to put to our customers because they like the idea of a low-touch implementation. They like the idea that their operators are being far more engaged, and they like the idea of finding these events in real time. If we could go to the next slide, please. I'm going to take you through a very brief case study. One of our most successful sectors has been the shopping mall sector. We have over 30 shopping malls using icetana globally at the moment. And if we think about a typical high-end shopping center environment, there might be, say, 200 cameras in a large shopping mall. There'll be a single control room with one operator in there. And at any point in time, there might be 5 guards on duty, anywhere from the entrances to where the taxi Uber rank is to wandering about the center. The cost for just for the salaries of those security staff can run up to $270,000 a year, and things still happen, right? You might have people coming in doing unscheduled maintenance, damaging the facilities. You can have aggressive behaviour taking place, people falling down escalators, illegal calls, that type of thing, graffiti outside the facility. Please head to the next slide. When icetana is implemented in this particular environment, we dramatically scale up the ability for the security operator in the control room to be able to identify events as they're happening, to the extent that we consistently find that our customers can reduce the headcount of guards out in the field, and they can nip in the bud potential events like unscheduled maintenance causing damage or aggressive behaviour escalating and resulting in actual problems happening. All of these things add up to a more than 300% investment return for our customers. So we're not just about finding events, we're also about saving on recurring operational costs. And this is how icetana has dramatically changed its pitch in the last year or so. Next slide, please. So over the next quarter, we will be enhancing our offerings, particularly to the guarding services sector, where we offer an incredible value add, scaling up our capabilities, and we're launching our new version 2 product, which takes advantage of many of the new contemporary technologies, such as that YOLO product that I mentioned earlier, integrating that into our offering, but staying true to our vision of being very low touch, very, very quickly delivering value to our customers when we implement. And if we go to the next slide, please. The team is a critical part of any investment. I've been a venture capital investor before I got on board as the CEO of icetana, and a quite successful angel investor as well. My key role as the CEO is to attract an incredible team and have that team highly motivated and delivering to goals. Kevin Brown, our Chief Operating Officer, has joined us from VGW, Virtual Gaming Worlds. That's a multi-billion-dollar business based out of Perth. Kev was the COO at that business and turned them around from $300 a day of turnover to $1.4 million a day. They're doing a lot more than that now. He has brought on board some amazing technical staff, and he's one of those unique characters who can connect between commercial requirements and technical capabilities and find solutions really, really fast. And my CFO, Raf Kimberly Bowen, has a long history of working in the software space and has been an incredible addition to the team over the last 18 months or so. If you go to the next slide, please. This is almost my last slide, in fact. So just a quick snapshot. I am definitely the minnow of the 4 presentations today. Our market cap as of yesterday was about just over 3 million. Today we popped up a bit, so I think we're at 4.2 odd million. So don't feel like you've missed the boat, because the interesting thing is icetana's software as a service business, our annualized recurring revenue exceeds $1.5 million this year. That's revenue that we very successfully retain with our customers and grow every year. We've managed a 40% growth rate over the last 2 years, and we're pretty excited about the future going forward with this new product. The multiples applied to our stock are incredibly low compared to global SaaS comparisons. So I think it's a great time to buy. So that's about it from me. Tim, over to you for questions.
Thanks, Matt. So certainly looks cheap there in regards to your cash balance and market cap. Can you tell us a little bit more about this kind of revenue pipeline and how you acquire customers?
Sure. So we've increasingly started using direct sales techniques with outbound calls to line up meetings where we get to pitch the product directly to the customers that are most interested in it. These tend to be security managers and large facility managers, as well as the people who are managing those control rooms that in the industry are called SOCs, or security operations centers. We've found this very, very successful in the last 3 to 6 months, so our pipeline's grown quite dramatically. And we've been testing this all in Australia. We do treat Australia as a bit of a test market for us. Most of our revenue actually comes from the Middle East, but we're seeing enormous opportunities growing out of Japan, some in Singapore, and surprisingly, perhaps surprisingly, in Latin America, where the surveillance systems there are very actively monitored.
I mean, and how do you monitor these opportunities offshore, and kind of, are there any particular geographic sort of territories that you see the kind of the greater potential?
We like to work with partners in market. We've got a very strong partner in Japan in the form of Macnica, and in Latin America, we're working together with NEC and some other partners. In the Middle East, we've got a direct sales office, so our own Dubai facility, but again, we work through distribution partners. So in the software industry, they used to be called systems integrators. In the surveillance industry, it tends to be security integrators. And those types of parties are very, very crucial to our distribution capability. We sign up one of their customers rave about the product. Those security integrators then go pitch it to other customers, and we get growth of multifactorial growth, let's say, from that type of channel management.
And what is the actual subscription model? How does that work?
So we typically charge on a per camera per year basis. Ballpark pricing is around about $120 per camera per year. So globally, with the Aussie dollar slipping a bit, it's helped us in terms of our revenue forecast going forward. And given the number of cameras that are out there, average contract value is anything between sort of $40,000 to $80,000 per annum recurring.
And some of the the local governments have cameras all around Sydney, for example. Are they potentially a client, or is there no one kind of sitting back there observing these cameras?
Well, this is what's changed in the last couple of years. So historically, nobody was watching those cameras. They were, there was a lot of time was spent pulling out the footage after the event had taken place. They do use these control rooms for instant response. So if they hear from the police that, something's going off down a particular street, they'll train the cameras in that particular area. But there is an increasing movement from the forward-thinking councils and from, smart city surveillance folks that we can use AI and we can do this a lot better, and we can nip things in the bud before they escalate. We can find out stuff that we might have missed in the past, and we can respond much more rapidly. And that's been super exciting for us. So a number of the pitches that I've done in the last couple of months have actually been to councils who have surprisingly large surveillance networks. We're talking tens of thousands of cameras across individual suburbs within Sydney, for example.
I mean, it's one thing having a surveillance camera, but is there almost an obligation for these governments and corporates, for example, to observe a little bit more from these cameras and to take your sort of information and data?
It's an interesting point. Historically, no. Historically, there hasn't been an obligation to actively monitor, but there is a court case in Canada, in Calgary, where the Calgary Council got sued because a gentleman he saw the surveillance camera, he was being chased, he ran up in front of it, waved his arms back and forth and said, help, I need help. And he ended up getting mugged directly in front of the camera, and he sued the council and said, guys, you told me I'd be safer with this surveillance, and there I was, literally waving to you, and you never spotted it. And they had to pay out on that. So it's an interesting development, I think. And if once you see what icetana can do, it's very hard to unsee it.
Yeah. Well, it almost becomes an obligation, right? And finally, just quickly, who's the ideal client base for icetana?
So look, my favourite pitches are always to companies who are in the guarding services space. If we are pitching to somebody who provides remote monitoring services to multiple clients, you get very large camera counts, and you get really strong value propositions where they can scale up their surveillance capability, and they have challenges recruiting and retaining security operators to work in these control rooms. We make their jobs far more exciting. It's like putting in front of a customer a Where's Wally book, because suddenly they start seeing things that are really interesting. They engage their brain. It's a lot more fun. There's a few questions that have come through I saw on the Q&A. Do you want me to have
if you don't mind, we're out of time, but if you could answer those questions online, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, so really quickly on public transport, trains and trams, it is an interesting space for us. We have done trials in the past, and we've got a couple of leads in the pipeline where we're working on that. We have worked with Melbourne Metro in the past and did some really good work for them. It is an interesting space for us, but again, it's not as actively monitored as you might think. In terms of costs and runway on the cash flow and cash positive status, our current business plan looks towards us becoming cash flow positive towards the end of this current financial year. So we haven't forecast any capital raise requirements, but that does rely on us growing revenues. And we do get a nice R&D tax rebate every year. So I'm quite comfortable with our cash position right now.
Great, man. That's all we have time for. Fascinating story. Love to hear it again later on in the year. Thanks again.
Thanks very much. See you later.